On July 15, 1979, Hong Kong was a bit sultry under the scorching sun. For many secondary 6 and 7 students who participated in this year's advanced level examination and advanced level examination, their hearts were cold. The advanced level examination and the advanced level examination are the entrance examinations for the University of Hong Kong and the Chinese University of Hong Kong respectively. Since there are only these two universities in Hong Kong, it is not an exaggeration to call them the college entrance examination. The academic system of CUHK is 4 years, which is 1 year longer than that of the 3-year system in Hong Kong. Therefore, secondary 6 students who only need to study for a year of preparatory courses can apply for the exam. Therefore, the number of applicants will be larger and the admission rate will be lower. At Shengyan Middle School, number 11 on Tin Street, Kwun Tong, East Kowloon, the long dragon at the entrance of the school office slowly moved forward. The crowd in line was quiet, and the atmosphere was a little depressing. Although Li Xian's expression was calm, there was still a trace of tension in his heart, which could be said to be the moment that changed his destiny. The financial conditions of Li Xian's family are not good, so he is studying a 1-year preparatory course. This time, he is desperate. If he fails to pass the test, he can only find a job. Although he was confident that he did very well in the exam, he didn't get the grades. After all, he didn't know what to do. After a while it was finally his turn. Li Xian let out a sigh of relief and said to the teacher in the window, "Class A No 04, Li Xian." The teacher quickly took out a sheet of paper from a stack of papers, glanced at it, a smile suddenly appeared on his originally expressionless face, he nodded kindly to Li Xian, and handed over the note. Li Xian took the note and glanced at it immediately, with a happy smile on his face. The 3 courses of General Mathematics, Advanced Mathematics, and Physics are all A, and the 2 courses of Chinese Language and English are B. Such excellent grades are enough for him to obtain an entrance degree at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, and even if he applies for a full scholarship, he is more confident. "Li Xian, how was the test?" A tall, thin-furried boy with black-rimmed glasses patted Li Xian's shoulder from behind. "Well, it's pretty good, 3 A's and 2 B's. Li Xian turned his head and saw that it was Luz Haihao from Class C. "Did you do a bad test? How do you see it? The hair is fluffy and the eyes are dull. This face is like a dry bitter gourd. Laughing is more ugly than crying. You said that I would not see that you failed the exam." Li Xian jokingly patted the other side's thin face. "Let's go. Please drink milk tea and comfort your injured heart. Hey, you'll be happy, you can escape and ascend to heaven, and I have to go back to study. I don't have much hope for this grade in the Hong Kong University entrance exam next year. It's better to go straight to work now." Luz Haihao said with a long face. The C class he read is a 2-year preparatory course, and there is still 1 year left. It's very disadvantageous to work in Hong Kong without a diploma. Do you want to work in a factory? Don't worry, if you can't get into the University of Hong Kong next year, your old bean will send you to study abroad. Li Xian comforted. Luz Haihao's family conditions are very good. Yes, his father is an orthopedic doctor, enough to support his son's study abroad expenses. In Hong Kong in 1979, there were only 2 universities, HKU and CUHK. The University of Science and Technology was still 7 or 8 years away from the preparations. Others such as Polytechnic University, City University, and Baptist University were still post-secondary colleges and could only issue high-level honors diploma, not the qualification to issue a bachelor's degree. According to the statistics of the Hong Kong Education Department, only 2 out of every 100 Hong Kong schoolage students have the opportunity to enter the university. This shows how fierce the competition for the college entrance examination in Hong Kong is. But I don't want to go abroad. I don't even know a friend in my life. Okay, be happy. Don't you have a year left? Starting tomorrow, you can hang your head and pierce the beams, I believe you can do it. Hong Kong adopts the British academic system, and there is a preparatory course between secondary schools and universities. The preparatory degree is applied for based on the results of the Hong Kong examination at the time of graduation from Form 5. Because Hong Kong University and Chinese University have different systems, they are divided into one-year preparatory courses and two-year preparatory courses. Li Xian and Lu Haihao were at the same table before the reclassification of the preparatory department, and they have a very good relationship. He and Lu Haihao had known each other for so long, and he knew very well that his friend had an eccentric personality. He wouldn't take things like bad exams to heart at all. If he slept and woke up tomorrow, he would forget about it. The two went out of the school gate and went to a tea and milk tea shop on the corner to buy 2 cups of milk tea. Lu Haihao was going to go to the beach at Repulse Bay to go crazy, but Li Xian didn't want to run that far, and he had to go to work in the afternoon, so the two separated at the entrance of the tea restaurant. Li Xian's family lives in Sao Mao Ping village in Kwun Tong, Kowloon, a large public housing estate built by the Hong Kong government in the late 1960s. His parents work in a garment factory in the nearby Kwun Tong industrial area. Hong Kong has a small land and a large population, and housing prices are very expensive. When building a building, real estate developers do not design a very large apartment. The 2-bedroom and 1-bedroom is only 450 feet, and a house with more than 1,000 feet is considered a luxury house. In the low-cost and low-rent public housing estates, the design of the apartment is more compact. The 5-member Li family applied for a suite with 2 bedrooms and 1 living room less than 400 square feet. Hong Kong is a British colony, so the imperial unit is commonly used in measurement, and 1 square foot is abbreviated as 1 foot. And 1 square meter is about a little over 10 feet. Brother, you're back, how are your grades? Can you be admitted to CUHK? As soon as Li Xian entered the door, his younger sister Li Ying, who was watching TV in the small living room, ran up to him. 3 A's and 2 B's, it's no problem to study at CUHK, I guess I can still apply for a full scholarship. Li Xian patted his sister's head and said with a smile. Oh, do you want to go out to celebrate? The little girl rolled her eyes and immediately put her arms around her brother's arm and said coquettishly. Celebrate at dinner time. Grandma comes back from work and asks her to cook some good dishes. Li Xian knew what his sister was up to, and took out a $10 piece of Hong Kong dollars from his trousers pocket. Here, this is for you. Your pocket money, don't spend it indiscriminately. Li Ying snatched the banknotes from Li Xian's hand and put them into her pockets with a smile. Usually, Leado gave 5 cents or 1 piece of pocket money. $10 was a huge sum for her. You two are the best for me. Li Xian's old bean is named Li Haichuan, who used to be a fisherman from Lantau Island. When Li Xian was 5 years old, Li Haichuan encountered a strong wind when he was fishing at sea. The small fishing boat capsized directly after encountering the wind and waves. After floating in the sea for a day, he was lucky to be rescued by a passing freighter. After Li Haichuan escaped, he didn't dare to go out to fish again, so he went to find a job in a factory in Kowloon. Later, he was lucky enough to apply for a public housing estate in Sao Mao Ping, which had just been built, so his family moved to Kwun Tong to settle down. He and his wife Lu Huilai gave birth to 2 sons and a daughter. Li Xian is the second son, and he has a big guy named Li Ke who is 2 years older than him. Li Ke is not as good at reading as his younger brother. He dropped out of school after finishing the 3rd year of secondary school. He started working in an electronics factory. He thought the work was too tiring and he quit after a few days of salary. Now he is watching the scene in a video room. There are still some leftovers from last night in the kitchen. Li Xian used the rice cooker to cook the meal. He and his sister Li Ying had lunch early, and then the two went out together. Li Xian went to the company to work in the afternoon, and Li Ying was sent by her to report the good news to her parents who were working in the garment factory. After all, the whole family knew that today was the day when the college entrance examination results were released, and they must be anxiously waiting for the news. After going to Leadu's factory, I will come back to do my summer homework. I will check it at night. Li Xian told his sister, when you come back, remember to call the boss again and ask him to come back for dinner. I just called him and didn't get through. Understood, brother, you are more talkative than grandma. Li Ying pouted and squinted at her second brother. The college entrance examination is completed at the end of May, and the results will not be released until mid-July, and the university entrance exam will not be released until September. Naturally, Li Xian would not let these months go to waste. He found a summer job in a small company engaged in import and export trade right after the exam. At that time, the company called Hengtai Trading Co., Limited urgently recruited a temporary translator who was proficient in computer expertise. It's 1979, and the personal computer isn't out of the woods yet. Computers are still a very expensive and high-tech thing for most people. The Apple II computer launched by Apple 2 years ago is priced at 10,000 Hong Kong dollars in Hong Kong. In this era when the average monthly income of ordinary people is only $1,000, such an expensive thing is definitely a luxury for ordinary Hong Kong people. The address of Hengtai Company is in an office building in the north point of Hong Kong Island, opposite Victoria Harbour. When Li Xian leaves home, he has to take the bus to Kwun Tong Ferry Pier first, and then take the ferry to the North Point Ferry Pier across the sea. Sitting on the ferry, Li Xian chose a window seat. Outside the window is the rippling sea, and looking west to the distance is the outline of Central. The grand central skyline of later generations has not yet taken shape, and the design drawings of the famous landmark buildings, the Bank of China Tower, the International Commerce Center, and the International Financial Center are still in the minds of architects. Now the tallest building in Hong Kong is the Kangol Building, which was completed in 1973 with a height of 178.5 meters and a total of 52 floors. However, its status as the tallest building in Hong Kong will soon be lost. The Hopewell Center with a height of 216 meters and a total of 66 floors has been completed and will soon take its place. Li Xian couldn't help but sigh with emotion, the vicissitudes of life, and the difference between people and people. Who could imagine the rebirth of transmigration, this kind of plot that can only appear in online YY novels, will one day hit him on the head. Didn't he just accidentally fail to fasten his seatbelt before the plane landed? Why did he have a flat tire? Boeing, your aircraft tires are made by Kum Ho. Li Xian was thrown out of his seat tragically during the sudden turbulence of the plane, his head hit the floor heavily, and then he suddenly lost consciousness. When he woke up again, he found that he had become another Hong Kong teenager with the same name and surname, and the time had also gone backwards. It was no longer 2015 in the 21st century, but all of a sudden back to 1979. In China in 1979, the curtain of reform and opening up was slowly unfolding, and Baoan County on the other side of the Jihe River was transformed into a deep-sea special economic zone. In the world of 1979, Margaret Thatcher became Britain's first ever female Prime Minister, and she will use her iron fist to win the reputation of Iron Lady. This year, the Iranian hostage incident broke out, and the once Middle East ally of the United States instantly became the #1 mortal enemy. In the same year, the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, the Red Empire that once made the entire Western world tremble. Uyuganshu www.uyuganshu.com sounded the death knell for itself with a war that did not pay for itself. As for Li Xian's semiconductor major, Intel released a castrated version of the 8086 processor, a cheaper 8088 processor. It was with this processor that IBM launched the PC 2 years later, ushering in the era of the personal computer and profoundly changing the world. Li Xian in his previous life was an orphan. In the spring of 1992, one morning after the great man made his southern tour, he was found by a kind aunt in the toilet of the Shanghai Special Economic Zone railway station. After calling the police, he was sent to the social welfare center by the police uncle. And then he grew up with this young city. Li Xian initially majored in software engineering in his undergraduate degree. Later, he thought about his unwillingness to become a code farmer after graduation, so he transferred from the School of Computer Science to the School of Information Engineering in his second year, majoring in microelectronics. After graduating from an undergraduate degree, Li Xian was very fortunate to apply for a full scholarship from a prestigious school in the United States with his excellent grades to study abroad for postgraduate studies. After successfully obtaining a master's degree, Li Xian found a job in a large company in Silicon Valley doing the underlying design of embedded systems, with an annual salary of 120,000 yuan, which is considered to be the level of the middle class in the United States. 2 months ago, when Li Xian attended a technical seminar, he met Chief Engineer Li of a well-known high-tech company in the Deep Sea Special Zone, and the other party invited him to return to work in China. Li Xian, who has been away from Shanghai Special Economic Zone for 8 years since he went to college, suddenly had the urge to go home all the time. Although Shanghai did not have his relatives, he had all the memories of his youth. So Li Xian resigned resolutely and took the flight from San Francisco to Hong Kong, but he didn't expect an accident when he was about to arrive at the door. "Vincent, you're back. Have you got your grades? How are you doing?" Vincent is Li Xian's English name. When he just returned to the company, other colleagues asked him about the results of the college entrance examination. "Thank you for your concern, the test is okay, 3 A's and 2 B's. Li Xian said with a smile, "I'll treat you to afternoon tea. I've already ordered milk tea and pineapple buns at the cafe downstairs, everyone has a share." "Oh! Oh! Oh!" There was a treat, and everyone cheered. It wasn't until the boss Huo Junming came out of the inner office that everyone calmed down and pretended to be working seriously. "Ah Xian, you did well in the exam. It seems that our company is going to send a college student." The boss smiled at Li Xian and said kindly, "Thank you for the compliment." Li Xian said modestly, "How did you go to the mainland to discuss this time? Has the contract been finalized?" Hengtai Company has just been established for less than 2 years, mainly doing some entrepot trade with the mainland. The focus of the company's operations before was to sell some second-hand textile equipment from Hong Kong factories to mainland enterprises. In recent years, the impact of hand trade quotas in Hong Kong's textile industry has not been very prosperous. Many textile factories have closed their doors and changed their careers, so a lot of equipment has been idle. Although most of these equipment were purchased 10 years ago when Hong Kong's textile industry was at its most prosperous, they are undoubtedly much more advanced than the old equipment in the 1950s and 1960s that are still used by many state-owned textile factories in mainland China. More importantly, these old equipments are cheap. Compared with importing the latest textile equipments from Japan or Germany, these second-hand goods can complete the expansion plan with only 1/5 of the foreign exchange. With Huo Junming's keen vision and ingenious marketing methods, Hengtai Company has developed rapidly in the past 2 years. From the original leather bag company, there are now more than 20 employees, renting a high-end office building, and the boss Huo Junming is also considered a small career. Something. But he was not satisfied. In May of this year, Huo Junming met the director of a scientific research institute in Beijing when he went to Guangdong to attend the Guangdong Fair. The institute was going to import a batch of small computers this year, so the director asked him, a Hong Kong businessman, to help gather some relevant information. When Huo Junming heard it, he thought it was an opportunity, and he took it to heart when he returned to Hong Kong. Small computers are one of the items on Batumi's list of restricted exports to China. Although they are not as stuck as large computers, if the mainland imports directly from the United States, the application and approval procedures will be very cumbersome. But if this matter is handled by a Hong Kong company, first importing from the United States to Hong Kong, and then exporting from Hong Kong to the mainland, there is no need for approval from the US government. Compared with Uncle Sam, the policy of the British Hong Kong government is much more flexible. For these non-core civilian technologies and products, basically open one eye and close one eye, and you can get the approval with a little bit of management. Huo Junming felt that there was room for manipulation in this matter, so he began to contact the research institute in Beijing. Beijing asked him to provide some mainstream computer materials for reference. So Huo Junming asked for a large amount of product information from several major computer manufacturers such as DIS, IBM, and Wangan in the United States. In the attitude of responsible service, he asked the company's employees to translate it into Chinese first, and then send the Chinese and English materials together to mainland customers. At this time, the problem came out. These salesmen in Hengtai Company also have good English and can communicate fluently with foreigners, but they are blinded when translating these professional technical materials, looking at a lot of terms and technical indicators. To start with the law, we can only temporarily recruit a professional translator who understands computers. At that time, Li Xian just finished the college entrance examination and applied for this position by chance. It was Huo Junming, the owner of the company, who interviewed him at that time. Li Xian spent an hour briefly translating a computer operation manual for the small computer PDP-11 produced by the American DIS Computer Company. Although it was only a rough translation, Huo Junming was very satisfied after reading it, at least much more reliable than the few college students he interviewed before, so he was hired on the spot. After Li Xian went to work, in addition to translating a series of various types of computers produced by various computer companies in the United States, he also made a comparative analysis of various products based on his own analysis. He can basically solve the various technical problems faxed by the Mainland Research Institute, without having to contact the original computer company in the United States. This definitely saves a lot of time. It can be said that Li Xian not only completed the data translation well, but also served as a Q&A technician. Because of his outstanding performance, the Daegu trade contract between Hengtai and the mainland is progressing rapidly. Huo Junming's business trip to the mainland this time is to sign the final trade contract for 3 PDP-11 mini-computers with this research institute in Beijing. The contract has been signed, and we have already ordered DIS in the United States to ship the computer. The computer will be shipped to Hong Kong next Wednesday. Huo Junming was very interested in talking about Shen Yi, and he was not tired of Li Xian, a temporary worker. I talked about the execution process of the contract. A small computer is an expensive thing. The total price quoted by Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com for 3 PDP-11 Hengtai to the Mainland Scientific Research Institute is 1 million Hong Kong dollars. This list, the company can have a net profit of at least 200,000. Xian, you did a good job this time. I asked the finance department to give you an extra 200 bonus this month. Huo Junming was very satisfied with Li Xian's performance. By the way, this time I went to Beijing to contact a new business. The Ministry of Petroleum of China also intends to import 2 computers. I have asked Jin to follow up, and you should cooperate with him during this time. Understood, Senior, I will cooperate with Brother Jin. Jin was one of the first batch of veterans recruited when the company was first established, and he was very trusted by the boss. Sir, I have already fixed the Epson printer that I couldn't use before. Li Xian suddenly thought of this and said to his boss. Really? Huo Junming didn't believe it. He bought this printer when he went to Japan a few months ago. At the time, the salesman said that this was a new product from Epson, which was lower in price than the printers on the market and cheaper in printing. As a result, Huo Junming took it all the way back to Hong Kong and found that there was no problem in printing English documents with it, but when printing Chinese documents, it was often garbled. The company's logistics asked a maintenance technician to repair it, and the other party said that it was a problem with the printer's Han card. This printer is equipped with Japanese Chinese cards. Printing Chinese requires Chinese cards. This Epson printer has not been listed in Hong Kong, so there is no matching Chinese card to replace, so the company had to buy a new printer. This incident made the boss Huo Junming feel a great loss of face, and his face was darkened for several days. If you don't believe me, sir, I'll show you the operation now. Li Xian walked to his place and turned on the Apple computer and printer on the desk. After a few minutes, the Apple II computer on the table has finished booting. Li Xian took out a tape from the drawer and put it into the magnetic box drive connected to the computer. That's right, not a floppy disk, nor a CD-ROM, but a tape. Li Xian's computer is the only computer in Hengtai Company. Before he came to work, the computer had been in the corner for a long time, and there was a thick layer of dust. Although Apple's latest Apple II Plus this year has added a floppy drive, the Apple II he is using is said to have been bought for a year, which is obviously not equipped with a floppy drive. Li Xian sat in front of the computer and began to input various command codes. Read the file, print the file. The already connected printer starts to work under the control of the computer, and the printing needle rubs against the paper to make a clicking sound. After a while, a 5-page Chinese translation of the VAX780 computer instruction manual was printed. Li Xian handed the printed document to his boss. Huo Junming took over the document and scanned it first, then nodded slightly, and then he quickly and carefully browsed through the entire contents. Although there are a few blank characters that are not printed out, the overall effect is not bad, the handwriting is clear and the paper is neat. How did you do it? Huo Junming couldn't help but admire this young boy who he had recruited on a temporary basis. The problem that professional maintenance personnel were helpless was solved by him silently. The repairman you invited last time, Mr. Xi, said that this printer is equipped with Chinese characters with Japanese characters, and there will be incompatibility when printing Chinese characters, so the characters are garbled. But when I think about it carefully, in fact, Japanese characters evolved from Chinese characters, and the two fonts are actually mostly the same. So can you work around it and redesign a driver to let the computer control the Japanese Hanka in the printer to print Chinese characters? During this period of time, I have been researching this problem in my spare time. Yesterday, I finally wrote a new driver. I tried it out, and it really works. You are terrible, Ah Xian, you did a good job. Huo Junming laughed and was very happy. Sir, I actually have another idea. Li Xian glanced at the boss and said seriously. Oh. Huo Junming noticed Li Xian's different eyes. Go to my office and talk, so as not to affect the work of other employees here. Li Xian followed the boss into the manager's office in the inner room. As soon as they were closed, all the employees who seemed to be attentive and serious at work immediately began whispering to each other. The boss is too kind to Vincent, I've never seen him be so kind to me. Another salesman who was recruited at about the same time as Li Xian said with some dissatisfaction. Yay, if you can run Huo Sheng's business and make 1,000,000 yuan a month, Huo Sheng will be very kind to you. You didn't have the courage to take the college entrance examination, and Vincent got 3 A's and 2 A's. B. This is the gap. Your starting salary as a regular employee is only 1,000, which is not as high as the salary of other people's summer interns, so you can complain here if you don't work hard. Li Wenjin, who was sitting next to him, squinted at Ya and said disdainfully. He is the Ajin mentioned by the boss Huo Junming just now. He frowned, he was responsible for bringing the new Aye. It's okay if he doesn't work hard at ordinary times, and he always complains. Li Xian's starting salary is 1,200, and he received a bonus of 300 last month, nearly half higher than Aya's. This is one of the reasons why Aya's heart is unbalanced. But the boss invited you to come here not for charity and welfare. If you can't do well and you are lazy, your salary will be low. Li Xian didn't know the discussions behind his colleagues outside. He was conducting a negotiation in the boss's office. Old man, I learned some information when I wrote the driver for this Epson printer. The dot matrix printer you bought is a new product that Epson printer just launched not long ago, and it is now sold in Japan and North America. Very hot. This printer uses needle printing technology, which is not only cheaper than the mainstream printers on the market, but also cheaper to print. But I consulted, Epson has not listed this printer in Hong Kong and Taiwan market. I guess it may be because it is so popular in Japan and the United States that Epson is now focusing most of its energy on grabbing those two major markets, and has not had time to develop the Asian market for a while. After all, just like the problems encountered by our company's machine, if Epson's new product wants to enter the Hong Kong and Taiwan markets, it must first redevelop a matching Chinese Hanka. Chinese Hanka. Huo Junming didn't know much about these professional things. Didn't you solve the problem by rewriting a driver before? Look, you see, these blank characters have not been printed out. This is the defect I left behind by taking a workaround. After all, there are still differences between the Chinese character library of Japanese Hanka and the Chinese Hanka. If you want to be perfect, printing must develop a special Chinese Hanka. Li Xian said affirmatively. But what does this have to do with me? Huo Junming suddenly stared sharply at Li Xian's eyes. Li Xian was not frightened by his boss's suddenly different aura, he looked at each other without showing any weakness. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com said calmly, I don't know if the old man has noticed. This is an opportunity. If I say I can design a Han card for you within a month, I wonder if you have the courage to talk to Epson about the exclusive distribution rights of this printer in Hong Kong and Taiwan. You want to cooperate with me? Huo Junming suddenly laughed, looking at him with a bit of meaning in his eyes. I am a temporary worker who only earns a salary of 1,000 yuan per month. How can I have the capital to discuss cooperation with you? Li Xian said with a modest smile, but he also revealed a kind of self-confidence. I hope you can follow behind to drink a few sips of soup when you eat big chunks of meat. Tell me, how are you going to drink the soup? Huo Junming said with great interest, his eyes full of inquiry. One price, 100,000 Hong Kong dollars. After I design it, the patent ownership of Hanka will be completely transferred to Hengtai Company. Li Xian gently revealed his asking price. Your asking price is not low? This price is enough for me to go directly to the University of Hong Kong to ask a professor to help. Huo Junming said irrefutably. Sir, a knowledgeable professor will definitely not ask for a lower price than me. If you talk about agency rights, a printer can earn at least 1,000 yuan. 100,000 yuan is only the profit of 100 printers. With the price of this Epson printer, the selling price, as long as the problem of Chinese character printers is solved, even if it cannot sweep the market, it is very easy to grab a large market share. At most 100 units are the sales volume of the Hong Kong market in 1 month, and my asking price is not high at all. Li Xian said confidently. Okay, it's a deal. Huo Junming's eyes flashed a gleam, and he suddenly reached out and patted the table and said. Li Xian was stunned for a moment. He didn't expect his boss to agree so easily. In fact, his bottom line was 50,000 Hong Kong dollars. Huo Junming didn't look at his usual amiable appearance. In fact, as a shrewd businessman, he knew very well what to fight and what not to fight. Compared with the millions of profits that can be brought to him every year by winning the agency rights, 100,000 yuan is only a small amount. Just like what Li Xian said before, he has eaten meat in large chunks, and he still doesn't allow others to drink broth after him. In contrast, he was more suspicious of whether Li Xian could get the Hanka he mentioned. But these are things in the future, and now the most important thing is to contact the Japanese company to get the exclusive agency distribution rights. Whether Li Xian can drink soup depends on his own ability. If it is really unreliable, he will spend a little more money to find a competent professional to make a Hanka. Well, okay, you are so refreshing, I am not ambiguous. You go to contact Japan Epson now, and it will take a few days for them to reply to you. I will quickly get the circuit design of Hanka ready. When you go to Japan to negotiate, throwing this to the other party will give you a little more sincerity and confidence. Li Xian said loudly. Well, you have a lot of ambition, don't let me down. Before Li Xian left, Huo Junming said encouragingly behind his back. Vincent, what are you talking about with the old man inside? Why did you go in for so long? Huo Junming's secretary Cao Yajing's desk is not far from the door. Company secrets, your level is too low to know. Li Xian said with a smile. Humph, just trick me. Be careful that I will secretly give you small shoes in the future, and I will speak ill of you in front of the old and the young every day. Cao Ginger rolled his eyes at him. The Amy I know is a kind and generous pretty girl, how could she do such a rude thing? Li Xian half leaned on the other side's table, not in a hurry to leave. How about I bribe you? Please have afternoon tea. Che, it's not sincere at all. I didn't invite me alone. Everyone in the company has a share. You think I don't know? Hey, others are just ordinary milk tea, but I bought you bubble tea. Others only have pineapple buns, and you have egg tarts. Are you sincere enough? Li Xian got up and left, saying as he walked. It's almost there. Li Xian and Cao Jinja teased a few words before returning to their positions. The military order he made in front of the boss just now, designing a hanka is naturally not something that can be completed in a day or two. In fact, he started working on it as early as half a month ago. The core of hanka is naturally a chip that stores a Chinese character library and can process Chinese character information. The second is the integrated circuit board with the chip design. This printer hanka designed by Li Xian is going to use the Z80 processor as the core. This chip was launched in 1976. The Zilog company that produced the Z80 was founded by several technicians who resigned from Intel. The design idea of this chip is a copy of Intel's 8080 processor. As a result, the newly launched Li Gui Z80 beat Intel's genuine Li Kui, and the only killer is the price. At that time, the retail price of the 8080 chip was $150 each, while the price of the Z80 was $25. The huge price gap between the two made Intel's 8080 chip instantly useless. The 8-bit chip Z80 was later selected as one of the 25 most shocking chips in history. Even in the 21st century, 30 years later, it still continues to glow tenaciously on some low-end single-chip microcomputers. Vitality. Besides the consideration of low price, Li Xian chose it because he is no stranger to the structure of this chip. When Li Xian was in college, there were many Z80 single-board computers purchased in the 1990s that were idle and useless in the laboratory. In a major assignment in a professional course, he also specially studied the feasibility of improving the backward Z80 single-board computer into an MCS51 single-chip computer. To this end, he spent half a semester doing various experiments, and finally wrote a complete thesis. This paper was later recommended by the teacher to be published in the Natural Science edition of the University Journal of our school. Therefore, Li Xian is very familiar with the circuit structure and performance of the Z80, and is naturally more handy when designing the corresponding circuit board. Before Li Xian's rebirth, he was engaged in the bottom-level design of embedded systems, and both software programming and hardware design must be excellent. And hardware design naturally includes circuit board design. Designing a hanka is really not difficult for him. Compared with the work before his rebirth, this task can only be regarded as entry-level difficulty at most. But easy in theory does not mean easy in practice. The biggest problem Li Xian encountered was that the development tools were not suitable. In the 21st century, circuit design has already entered the stage of computer automation development, and various CAD and EDA auxiliary software are very handy. Back in 1979, commercial compute-rated software had not yet come out, and the design and wiring of integrated circuits were mostly done manually. Of course, if Li Xian was in a big company like IBM and Intel, there must be design software developed by those companies and large computers for onboard simulation testing. But Li Xian is now fighting alone. Reading www.uuganshu.com This undoubtedly greatly increases the difficulty. Fortunately, the circuit diagram of this hanka is not too complicated, and Li Xian can barely handle it. As for the negotiation with the Japanese, it depends on whether the boss Huo Junming can successfully convince the other party. If it doesn't work, all his hard work these days will be in vain. As for whether Huo Junming would turn his face over after taking over the distribution rights of Epson's MX80 printer, Li Xian thought it was unlikely. Based on his own observations since he joined the company, although the boss is more shrewd in business, he is not the kind of person who cares about things, and he is more decisive in his work. This is why Li Xian is willing to encourage him to go to Japan to talk about agency rights. If the other party really kicked him away in the end, Li Xian could only admit that he was unlucky. Who told him that his strength was not enough? He was not qualified to end up as a player, but could only be a small chip for others. As for applying for a patent or something, it's not a very powerful invention, it's just a small application based on someone else's product. The design of the whole Chinese hanka is largely based on the original Japanese hanka in the Epson printer, and the line interface is also based on the interface of the printer, so there is no value in opening this printer. And to some extent, Li Xian's hanka is suspected of plagiarizing other people's technology. If you really want to avoid his design, it is not difficult to redesign a hanka. So he never thought about applying for a patent at all. After all, applying for a patent is not free, on the contrary, the cost is not cheap. Even if you apply for a patent in Hong Kong, it costs a few hundred yuan, and if you apply for an international patent, you need to find a specialized agency, which costs at least 1,000 yuan. Uncle, cut only the roast duck. Li Xian stood at the entrance of Li Ji's roast meat shop and shouted to the boss inside. He was going to buy some roast meat to go home. It's Xianzhe, I heard that you have been admitted to university. Your old bean has already weighed half of it, you don't need to buy it. The owner of the roast meat shop is Li Er, who is shirtless from the oven. Only take a freshly roasted fat duck. The taste of his roast meat is the best in the nearby streets. I haven't started filling out the college application yet. The college entrance examination results are out, and it's not bad. I bought roast goose in Leadu, so please help me cut a pound of barbecued pork. Li Xian's family is relatively poor, even if his parents save a little, the money should also be kept for emergencies, and it is rare to buy meat dishes several times a month. Okay. Suanzhe, you are very promising, and you have started to make money to support your family before you go to college. Li Er saw that there was business, and immediately put other things aside, and came to greet the guests first. Li Xian has never been a person who is willing to wrong himself. Now that he has an income, he often goes home from get off work and passes by this roast meat restaurant, and he will buy some cooked food and go back to improve his meals. By the time he got home, the whole family was already waiting for him to return to work for dinner. Seeing Li Xian enter the door, the little sister Li Ying immediately pulled a basket and ran out to the toast shop downstairs to buy cold beer and soda. There is no refrigerator at home, I bought it early in the summer, and it will be out of ice in a few minutes. Today's dinner is very rich. There are 8 dishes together with meat and vegetables. My mother also specially cooked Li Xian's favorite oysters. Li Xian's college entrance examination results were confirmed, and the whole family was very happy, especially Li Xian's old bean Li Haijuan. He was usually taciturn and his voice became louder after drinking. Find a good job in the future. For Hong Kong children, being admitted to university means having a good future. After graduating from high school, I came out to work, and the starting salary was only 1,000 yuan. After graduating from college, the starting salary is around 2,500 to 3,000. What's more, jobs that pay well tend to have better prospects. To be admitted to the University of Hong Kong and CUHK, for families at the bottom of the society like the Li family, it means that they have found the best stepping stone to the upper middle class society. Brother, aren't you going to sleep at home tonight? Li Xian saw that his elder brother was about to go out. Well, at home, I have to stay in the living room to make a floor. It's better to go back to my place. Besides, the video room is a business at night. I have to watch it, otherwise the boss will scold people if something goes wrong. Li Kai took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket, took out one and lit it with a lighter, put it in his mouth and said with a smile, "When Aang called me today, my boss happened to be next to me. I know you passed the test. 3 A's and 2 B's, and asked me if I was born to Leadu. Why are you so different from you? Haha." The public housing the Li family applied for is a very small two-bedroom and own a living room. A 2-story iron bed in the second bedroom occupies a small area of the area, plus a small wardrobe, and there is not much space for a writing desk. In such a small bedroom, Li Xian and Li Ying are 2 sisters. Li Ying is a girl. She sleeps on the top bunk with a curtain hanging on the bed. She can still have a little private space by pulling the curtain when she sleeps. Fortunately, Li Ying is only 12 years old this year. If she was a few years older, Li Xian would be even more embarrassed. But that's the housing situation in Hong Kong, and the Li family's situation is far from the worst. There are many families with 3 or 4 siblings crammed into the same small room. Brother. Li Xian wanted to say something, but he didn't know how to say it. You boss, I'm different from you. I haven't been able to study, skip classes, and fight since I was a child. I've been a bad boy for a long time. Let me and Leadu go to work in a garment factory. I can't stand the pain, so I can only join the club. Come on. Li Kai knew what his younger brother wanted to say. Don't worry, you boss, my eyes are bright. Anyway, I never thought that I would become a popular club in the future, and I won't go to the top in everything. I will definitely be able to. Take care of yourself. Li Xian naturally understands that these are the words of the elder brother to comfort him, and he can't help himself when he enters the arena. Being a young and dangerous boy is 3 times poorer and 5 richer. If you want to spend a lot of money, you need to fight with your life. When the boss is drying the horse, if you don't rush to the front, why should the boss support you and give you the most oily place to watch? As the saying goes, a sword has no eyes, and if you often walk by the river, you will always have wet shoes one day. Li Xian also knows that he is not able to help his eldest brother now. I hope that the boss Huo Junming's trip to Japan can successfully win the distribution rights of Epson printers, so that he can get the first pot of gold soon. When I have the 100,000 yuan, I will use some of it to find a store for my eldest brother to do business. No matter if I transfer or lose, I will have a serious business. He believes that with the memories in his mind that are 30 years ahead of this era, it will not take long for him to rise rapidly and succeed. At that time, Leadu and mother won't have to work so hard, and change to a bigger house, and the younger sister Aing should also transfer to other famous schools with better teaching level. As for the eldest brother, even if he messes around every day and just keeps him for the rest of his life, it's not in vain for him to steal money to buy fish eggs for himself when he was a child. Although the family is very hard, this kind of warm family affection, which is thicker than water, is something Li Xian has never enjoyed in his previous life. The family has a special obsession for his to-life soul. Reading www.yuyuganshu.com also inspired him to work hard and create his own success. In the next few days, Li Xian devoted most of his time to the design and development of the hanka, and finally completed the final draft before Huo Junming departed for Japan, and handed it over to the boss to go to Japan on his behalf, as a way of showing his strength and sincerity when negotiating. A small chip. Huo Junming has not been idle these days. As the saying goes, if you know yourself and your opponent, you will be safe in 100 battles. He has spent a lot of time collecting relevant information about Epson Corporation in Japan these days. Epson has no offices in Hong Kong, although there are some models of microprinters for supermarkets and department store cashiers on the market. But the market share is very small, and there are no agents to develop the market. This is good news for Hengtai Company. In addition to selling various types of printers, Epson also produces LCD screens. Epson's parent company is Seiko, a well-known Japanese watchmaking company, and Epson's LCD screen is mainly used as the screen for the parent company to produce electronic watches. This is another good news for Huo Junming. Before he resigned to start his own company, he worked as a sales manager in an electronic watch factory in Hong Kong. Most of the electronic watches produced in Hong Kong are low-end products, mainly sold to Southeast Asia, the United States and Europe. As far as he knows, there are no local companies producing LCD screens in Hong Kong. The main suppliers of accessories are from Japan and Europe, of which Epson's share should be very small. If Huo Junming can come up with a packaged agency plan for Epson when negotiating with Epson, including two major products, printers and LCD screens, to fully develop the Hong Kong market for Epson, then his chances of successfully winning the agency will undoubtedly increase a lot. Hey, Brother Shen, business is booming. Have the items I ordered have arrived? I'm waiting for them. Li Xian approached a shop called Chenji Electronics Store on Yaliao Street. This is a small shop specializing in all kinds of electronic components and electronic instruments. The owner is a man in his early 30s with a stern face. His name is Lu Heshan. Well, it's Ah Xian. Lu Heshan nodded to him. I'll get it for you when the thing arrives. Lu Heshan bent down and took out a plastic bag from a storage compartment under the counter. No, this is the Z80 processor you ordered, a box of exactly 10 pieces. The rest are the instruments you want, the list is here, you yourself check it out. Li Xian took the catalog list handed over by Brother Shen and compared them one by one. These are all tools for programming chips, testers, editors, programming sockets, connectors, and adapters. These things are very hard to find. Li Xian went around Hong Kong and Kowloon and found no place that sold these electronic instruments. Later, I had no choice but to come to Lu Heshan for help. After reading his catalog list, the other party agreed to help him purchase from abroad. Li Xian met Brother Shen when he upgraded the Apple II in the company. His original computer was the standard configuration of Apple's first Apple II model, with only a pitiful 4 KB of memory, while the standard memory of later laptops has reached 4 guaranis. There is a million times difference between the two. You read that right, not 100 times, but a million times. Fortunately, Apple has reserved upgrade space for customers. In order to make his machine run faster, Li Xian spent his own money to increase the memory to 32 KB as soon as he was paid. He found the accessories here at Lu Heshan at that time. At that time, he also bought a second-hand Z80 conversion card and installed it on the computer under the recommendation of Lu Heshan. Anyone who has used Apple computers knows that Apple's operating system will always be different. Later generations will confront iOS against Android and OS X against Windows. In fact, this tradition has existed since Apple II, the first commercial computer originally produced by Apple. It was not compatible with the CP/M operating system, which had almost 90% market share at the time. At that time, most of the software on the market was developed for the CP/M system, but Apple's computer could not run the CP/M system, but it just sold very well. Software vendors are naturally reluctant to give up this part of the market, so they began to think about how to move CP/M-based software to run on Apple II. So someone designed a soft card Apple II software conversion card, which is the Z80 card. This card has a Z80 processor, which can take over the bus control, memory address conversion and interface allocation of the Apple II, so as to run the CP/M operating system on the Apple II computer smoothly. The person who designed this Z80 card is no stranger to everyone. His name is Paul Allen, the owner of the NBA Portland Trail Blazers, a super rich with assets of more than $20 billion. It was Microsoft that he founded with Bill Gates that deeply influenced an era. Do you sometimes feel that this world is too small? It turns out that Apple and Microsoft have had a relationship so early, maybe this is the so-called fate. Back to the topic, Li Xian's boss, Huo Junming, called back earlier, and the negotiation between him and Epson went very smoothly. There is an unexpected situation that Epson's technicians appreciate the Hanka drawing designed by Li Xian and intend to buy it from Li Xian and produce it by himself. Huo Junming completely agrees with this, all he cares about is the sales agency. Since the Japanese side is willing to directly produce printers with Chinese Hanka to supply the Hong Kong and Taiwan markets, this is the best result for him. This saves him the extra cost of hiring someone to manufacture the Hanka, and then putting it into the printer handle. In this regard, Li Xian also said that it doesn't matter who he sells to is not selling, anyway, he is not ready to rip off. It is not very difficult for Epson to redevelop a suitable Chinese Hanka by itself. Li Xian's design is just to save some time and cost for the other party. Huo Junming said that Epson would send a technician to interview Li Xian about related matters, and the other party hoped to see the actual Hanka. It just so happened that before the boss went to Japan, Li Xian had already approved a check of 5,000 yuan for research and development funds. A PCB, printed circuit board, factory in Kuntong Industrial Zone, Kowloon, which he contacted, has also completed several sample circuit boards that it had previously requested for trial production. Li Xian's next job is to solder the Z80 chip to the circuit board, and then burn the Chinese character library data into the chip, and then install it on the printer for testing. Well, everything is right, thank you, Brother Shen. Li Xian checked it again and everything was right. A total of 2,000 yuan will be charged to you minus the fraction, thank you for your patronage. Brother Shen finally squeezed a smile out of his expressionless face when he received the money. Li Xian didn't even bargain, so he took out his wallet, pointed out 200 yuan bills and handed them over to the other party, and then asked him to open a receipt, which was to be reimbursed to the boss. Apliu Street is a small street in Sham Shui Po, Hong Kong. It was originally famous for selling second-hand goods. Since the 1970s, it has gradually become a distribution center for electronic parts in Hong Kong. There are many shops selling second-hand electrical appliances and old products on the street. It is bustling every day, there are many Southeast Asian merchants who come to buy goods, and many tourists and citizens who come to Dobao. Li Xian walked in the crowd of people, looking at the slightly messy storefront signs and promotional billboards on both sides of the street. He suddenly thought of buying a tape recorder for his little sister Li Ying. She said last time that she wanted to buy an English tape for listening to it, but the thrifty mother refused without hesitation. "Boss, do you have a tape recorder?" Li Xian approached a video store. "Yes, why not? Which type do you want?" "I just bought a batch of Japan's Sanyo brand dual-card dual-seat radios. The sound quality is good, the number of receivers is high, and it looks beautiful at home." The boss pointed to the window in the most conspicuous position. A black dual-purpose recorder was introduced enthusiastically. "Sorry, I didn't make it clear. What I want is not this kind of big tape recorder, but that kind of single cassette tape player. I bought it for my sister to learn English and listen to songs." Li Xian waved his hand. "You're a really good guy. You're talking about this kind of thing, and it's all in this row. Some are made in the United States, some are made in Japan, and some are made in Hong Kong, you choose. Which brand sells better, and the quality is more reliable? Then this one is a Japanese brand from Sanyo. The quality is very good. As long as you don't break it on purpose, you can't use you to come back and find me for a replacement within a year." The boss immediately became enthusiastic when he saw that Li Xian really wanted to buy it. "Stand up." After some bargaining, Li Xian spent 200 Hong Kong dollars to buy this Sanyo tape recorder. Men buy things neatly, and they pay the bill when they choose. If a girl is with you, they will inevitably visit a few more stores, shop around and so on. Li Xian was about to leave, when he inadvertently looked up. He saw a beautiful figure in front of a booth not far to the left, with long fluffy long wavy hair and a white dress. However, a man in a denim jacket next to her deliberately approached slowly, and a hand quietly reached out to the small satchel that the woman was carrying on her shoulders. Li Xian originally wanted to pretend he didn't see it, but he never had a sense of justice. It just happened that the woman turned her head and glanced here for some reason, revealing a delicate face without makeup. It was this startling glance that attracted Li Xian all of a sudden. Since she is such a beauty, the situation is completely different. Li Xian saw the man next to him who was going to steal the wallet. Although he was frightened by the beauty's sudden turn of his head, he withdrew his hand, but he was unwilling to leave if he failed. So he stepped forward quickly, and skillfully wrapped his right hand around the waist of the girl in the white dress. His forehead was lightly close to the end of the girl's fluffy hair, and a faint fragrance made him feel at ease. Li Xian brought his lips to the girl's earlobe, and said in a voice that only the two of them could hear, "Be careful with your bag." Then he wrapped his arms around the girl and turned around slightly pulling away from the sneaky man beside him. "Brother, this pretty girl already owns a famous flower, please don't get too close, I'll be jealous." Li Xian's mouth curled slightly, deliberately showing a rebellious look, squinting with a warning said in a tone. Seeing that someone had ruined his good deeds, the man glared at Li Xian, but he didn't dare to stay any longer. He quickly turned his head and walked away. The girl in the white skirt seemed to be frightened by Li Xian's bold move, and let Li Xian continue to hug her, but her body was very stiff. Li Xian finally gently let go of the hand that was holding the girl's waist, feeling rather reluctant. And the girl in the white dress whose head crashed finally reacted, but she didn't make any drastic actions, just her pink face flushed. "I'm sorry, I was a little presumptuous just now, and I'm in a hurry. I don't think he thought much about stealing your wallet." Li Xian defended his slightly frivolous behavior. "Can you get to know me? My name is Li Xian, Musa Li, Qi Yu Xian's Xian." "Hello, my name is Zhong Chahong." The girl said her name generously, but she was not as shy as before. "Zhong Chahong." Li Xian was taken aback, and looked carefully at the beautiful and charming face in front of him. It was vaguely like the butterfly in Across the Four Seas that was between Leslie Chung and Chow Yun Fat, elegantly ironing the post. Romantic and light beautiful girl red beans. It's just that it's not as charming as it was later, and it's a bit more pure and lovely next door. "You know me?" Zhong Chahong asked softly. "How many people in Hong Kong don't know you?" Li Xian asked rhetorically. Zhong Chahong immediately understood what the other party meant. She had just participated in this year's Miss Hong Kong contest. Although it was a pity that she was only fourth, she was already well known, but she never felt that she was already a celebrity. "I remember you said in the newspaper that you were timid, but now I don't think you are timid at all." Li Xian said with a smile, "Dale Yao Street is a place where men come to shop, and a beautiful girl like you is alone. Don't bring a flower protector, it's easy to be targeted." "Is it as scary as you said?" Zhong Chu gave him a red and white look, and the fleeting aura made Li Xian's mind sway somewhat. "Didn't you meet me just now? If I hadn't acted righteously, you would have to walk home." Li Xian Nuzui gestured to her bag. "Well, thank you in a hurry." Zhong Chahong felt a little embarrassed. "Let's go first, let's not stand here and hinder other people's traffic." Li Xian took the opportunity to take the other party's jade hand and walked forward together. "What are you buying here?" Zhong Chahong immediately shook off his hand gently, and Li Xian didn't care at all, as if nothing happened. "Come and buy a tape recorder for my sister." "No way." Li Xian deliberately put on a surprised expression. "What's wrong?" Zhong Chahong was a little puzzled. "Look at what this is." Li Xian handed over the tape recorder that he was holding in his left hand. "We really have a good understanding of each other, no wonder we are destined to know each other. I'll also buy a tape recorder for my sister." "Really? It's a bit of fate." Zhong Chahong felt a little wrong after she said, "You are so slick, Do you usually talk to girls like this? No way, I'm just feeling it. Li Xian shook his head, suddenly reached out and grabbed the girl. Zhong Chihong turned to look at him suspiciously. At this time, Li Xian stared at each other with sincerity. May I know your phone number? Ah! Zhong Chihong didn't react at once. Li Xian has already stepped back half a step, let go of her hand. His face is full of the sly smile after the trick. Actually, this is the way I talk to girls, straight to the point. Ordinary girls see my pair of shoes. Eyes full of sincerity, even the ice will be melted, and immediately report the number shyly. Your heart is colder than the ice, deliberately pretending to be stupid and ignoring me, haha. Li Xian decisively received a few show punches from the beauty, and Zhong Chihong found that she unknowingly did not reject this man who had only known each other for a few minutes. Didn't you just say that you wanted to thank me? I'm a little thirsty, please treat me to a soda. Li Xian gestured towards a cold drink shop in the mouth. He didn't continue joking, it was too much, after all, the two had just met. Is there such a thing for you to repay your kindness? Zhong Chihong said this on her lips, but walked towards the side not far away. What are you doing recently? Filming. The two sat in the cold drink shop and took a break while blowing a fan. Li Xian took a sip of coke and looked at the girl in front of him with a slightly curly long wavy hair exuding a somewhat charming style, and couldn't help but feel a little moved. Who would ask me to make a movie? Zhong Chihong pouted, a little playful and cute. I went to TVB to audition before, but I didn't succeed. Fortunately, I received an advertisement a few days ago, otherwise I would starve to death. Zhong Chihong's family is not well off, so Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. She is the eldest daughter in the family. She has two younger sisters and a younger brother. She just got paid for shooting an advertisement before, so she wanted to buy a tape recorder for her younger sister. Li Xian didn't expect that the more popular you are than Zhong Chihong, the woman who drives so many men crazy, that there are more than 10,000 kinds of amorous feelings, and the years are still indifferent. Honggu, who is still beautiful after decades, is actually like this. Black history. The beautiful face in front of her is no longer the unreachable goddess in her previous life, but the girl next door as ordinary as herself. Would you like me to show you the face? Li Xian quietly put his head up, his eyes almost touching the bridge of the other person's nose, and then quietly stared at the delicate and flawless jade face in front of him. Close your eyes. Giggle. The girl burst out laughing, and her whole body suddenly shrank back. What bad idea are you playing? I won't be fooled. What bad idea did I make? Li Xian showed an innocent expression. Your eyes are too smart, my attention is always attracted unconsciously, and I can't concentrate to show you the pictures. That's why I want you to close your eyes. Li Xian's naked praise made Zhong Chihong a little shy, but she was a little happy. Do you think I'm going to do something bad to you after I make you close your eyes? Are you going to resist? Li Xian deliberately showed a bit of a wretched smile. You are so annoying. Zhong Chihong was a little furious at her teasing. The two chatted for half an hour in the tea restaurant, and the initial sense of unfamiliar defense gradually disappeared in Li Xian's witty or humorous gags. Before saying goodbye, Li Xian successfully obtained the phone number of Zhong Chihong's house. This hanka made by Li Xian is not mass-produced, but a test product. Therefore, after the circuit board is obtained, the components such as chips, EPROMs, and resistors need to be soldered by himself. Compared with his design ability, Li Xian's electric welding technology is obviously much worse. Either the solder joint is too large to cause a short circuit, or the solder joint is too small to cause an open circuit. He ruined 2 circuit boards in a row, and finally the third circuit board was all welded successfully. Finally, everything including the driver was debugged before the Japanese came to Hong Kong. 2 people from Japan's Epson company came to Hong Kong with Huo Junming. One is called Shinji Kagawa. Unfortunately, he chose to engage in technology instead of playing football. He is a section leader of the technology department of Epson. Li Jun, you are a very talented designer. The design of this hanka is very good. I heard from Mr. Falk that you have just graduated from high school and haven't even gone to university. Your Excellency should be aware that the electronics industry in Hong Kong is not developed, and I know if you have considered studying in Japan, Epson Club can connect you with the best universities in Japan and cover the full cost. The slender, black-crimmed teacher Kagawa in his early 40s is very sincere. Said. No, thank you Mr. Kagawa for your love, I'm not going to leave Hong Kong for the time being. Li Xian did not accept the other party's solicitation, his ambition was much farther than the other party imagined, and an Epson company was not his goal. That's such a pity. If you change your mind in the future, you can contact me at any time. Kagawa Shinji did not look unhappy because of the failure of the recruitment, but he still had a warm and humble smile on his face, but his English with a strong Japanese accent, it was a little difficult for Li Xian to listen. He and another Epson representative next to him, Masakazu Oda, whispered a few words. Mr. Li Xian, this is the transfer contract that our company has issued for you, please take a look. Oda-gen took out a document from his briefcase, bowed his head, and handed it to Li Xian with both hands. The Japanese etiquette is good, nothing to say, but the English level has to make people complain. When Li Xian worked in Silicon Valley in his previous life, the English of all Asians, Japanese, and Indians, was the most difficult to understand, while the English of Chinese, especially new immigrants, was the most standard, better than many Americans. After the Meiji Restoration in Japan, a large number of English derivatives were introduced into Japanese, and these derivatives have some differences from the original English pronunciation after the localized pronunciation has been improved. But Japanese people are used to this pronunciation. When learning English, these Japanese have the same meaning as the original English, so most Japanese people can't turn their tongues. Li Xian took the contract handed over by Oda, and the other party prepared it very thoughtfully. The contract handed to him was in both Chinese and English languages. From these details, it can be seen that there is definitely a reason for the success of Japanese goods in the world. He carefully browsed the contract from beginning to end. Epson offered a very generous price, which was HK $120,000 to buy out all his software and hardware designs. This price has been higher than Li Xian's original psychological expectations. So Li Xian asked Hengtai Company's lawyers to help review the contract and confirmed that there were no trap clauses, and he happily signed his name on the contract. Happy cooperation. Huo Junming specially took out a bottle of red wine from the glass cabinet, poured a glass for everyone, and everyone clinked happily together to celebrate. When Li Xian put the check for HK $120,000 issued by Epson into his pocket, his heart beat faster. This is the first pot of gold he has truly earned since his rebirth. 120,000 Hong Kong dollars, equivalent to more than $25,000 at the current exchange rate. 3 years ago, Jobs and 2 other friends started Apple with just $1,300 in capital. In contrast, Li Xian's income on hand is already very considerable, and he can finally start his next plan. It's been more than a month since you left school. You resigned so early and I have to find a translator again. Huo Junming said with a smile when he accepted Li Xian's resignation letter. I haven't had a good time this summer. Before, thanks to you, I made a fortune from the Japanese. The tuition and living expenses of the university have been settled. Now I can finally relax. Huo Junming was dealing with each other, and the ties of interests between the two had surpassed that of ordinary bosses and employees, and his tone of speech had become much more casual. Well, that's right, I forgot that you're still an 18-year-old offspring. I'm as old as you and can only go out and play with girls. It doesn't look like you've already made money every day. Huo Junming was lying on the boss's back. Sitting on the chair, he said leisurely with a cigarette in his mouth. If you say Rajan Jindu, it must be you. When will Epson's printers be listed in Hong Kong? It's still early. We will have to wait until October for the listing. First, we will shoot a commercial to promote it. It will take time to establish channels in Taiwan and Taiwan. The agency rights of Hong Kong, Macau, and Taiwan have been obtained. Advertising? Do you need an actress? I have a friend, a very beautiful woman named Zhong Chahong. This year, Miss Hong Kong is the 4th place. If you want to choose a time, I will ask her to invite you to dinner. You take a look to see if there is a chance to be an advertising heroine. Li Xian suddenly thought of Zhong Chahong, a beautiful woman he met some time ago. He recently called every once in a while to harass this beauty, and he even corrupted a meal from her 2 days ago. When chasing a girl, if you occasionally ask her to treat you to a meal, it is easier for people to remember you than if you treat her to a meal. Of course, asking a girl to invite her to dinner is just a pretext. After dinner, you should invite her to watch a movie by the way. After watching the movie, go have a cup of coffee together. After such a combination of punches, the relationship between the two will soon be closer. It seems that Xianzhe is also very good at chasing girls, and he already knows Hong Kong sisters. I also want to pass on my experience of making beautiful girls to you when I was young. It seems that I don't need it. Huo Junming took a puff of cigarette, slowly exhaled a smoke ring, and laughed heartily. You don't have to eat, I'm going to fly to Taipei tomorrow. Well, this is the business card of the advertising director, you ask her to call by herself. I'll call the director later, but she won't be sure if the director is interested in her. Thank you, Mr. Xiao, as long as there is a chance. I am lucky to be selected by the director, it doesn't matter if I am not selected. Li Xian took the business card and put it away carefully. After chatting with the boss for a while the phone on the desk rang, Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Li Xian said his goodbye. Not far away, Cao Jinja was reading a book seriously and didn't notice his whereabouts. An, deserted at work. Li Xian quietly walked behind Cao Jinja, and then suddenly said. Cao Jinja, who was secretly reading a book, was taken aback. She raised her head and found that Li Xian was playing a prank and called him with a show of fists. Ah! Ah! Vincent, how bad are you? You scared me to death. Cao Jinja beat him a few times, and seeing that he was obedient and did not dodge, she was out of breath, and then she patted her chest in fear. This girl, Cao Jinja, doesn't look at the generous and cheerful smile she usually has. In fact, she has a small but strong personality. Although she didn't go to college, she is not ready to be a secretary for the rest of her life. She is going to night school to prepare for the accounting qualification certificate, and she usually surreptitiously reads books on finance courses in her spare time at work. You are so bold, you read irrelevant books during working hours, be careful to be caught by the old and young. Li Xian said with a smile, I just quit my job, I'm here to say goodbye to you. Ah! The girl's face was full of surprise, isn't there a month before the start of CUHK? Well, I'm going to rest for a while. I haven't had a good time this summer. Li Xian gave the same explanation as before. Cao Jinjian responded with a sigh, then glanced at Li Xian again, her expression a bit complicated, contact more in the future. Li Xian knew that she had a vague affection for him, but he had no interest in this girl. He said goodbye to other colleagues in the company, and then turned to leave the place where he had been working for almost 2 months. Li Xian came out of the company and first found a phone booth to call Zhong Chahong. Beautiful girl, what are you doing? Shooting commercials? You can still receive calls from me when shooting commercials. Did you invite the director home? He, don't be angry, it's just a joke. You owe me a meal before. Now, I decided to let you settle this debt tonight. I want to eat abalone and sea cucumber. Would you like to invite me? Wow! How could this not be the case, Hong Hong? I didn't expect you to turn around and deny your account so quickly, so I misread you. You can only ask for barbecue pork rice, that's fine, I'm not a picky eater. See you tonight, when there is good news for you. Li Xian was in a good mood when he hung up the phone. He didn't bother to take the ferry to change the bus. He waved the taxi to stop for a year and went to Sham Shui Po. Li Kei's video studio is crowded into a corner of Fulong Street in Sham Shui Po. This video hall has only half of the facade, and 2/3 of it is occupied by the ticket window, leaving an end aisle for the audience to enter and exit. I walked through the aisle and went inside, but there were heaven and earth inside. The 3 rooms were renovated into 3 screening halls, which could show different videotapes at the same time. This kind of cinema is not very formal at first glance, and naturally it also shows some restricted-level romantic films. The video hall is closed in the morning, and in the afternoon it is deserted. Business will only flourish after nightfall. Especially when there is a new blockbuster movie, there is often a scene where a ticket is hard to get. The owner of the video room, surnamed Huang, does not usually come here except to check the account once a day and withdraw the money. Hey, four-eyed boy, I've started to work, and I'm still dozing off. Be careful if Huang Bukya catches it, and your salary will be deducted. Is my brother upstairs? Li Xian Peng Peng patted the glass of the ticket booth twice, awakening the dozing conductor. Huang Bukya was talking about the owner of the video room, and the 2 front teeth were particularly prominent. It's Xianzai, are you coming to see your boss? Your boss is sleeping upstairs, hee. Xianzai raised his head and wiped the feces from the corners of his eyes, only to find that it was Li Xian, with a wretched smile. Li Xian didn't say much. He walked through the aisle, and there was a staircase going upstairs. He walked straight to the 2nd floor. His eldest brother's room was at the innermost position, but the door was locked. Li Xian thought that his eldest brother was still sleeping in, and patted the door hard. Which punter? Knock the fart, you're in a hurry to reincarnate. Li Kei opened the door with a scolding shirtless, a bit of anger on his face. When he saw that it was his own scoundrel, he had to swallow the swearing words back in his mouth, revealing a bit of anger. Embarrassed smirk. Li Xian had already seen through the gap that there was a figure of the bed inside the door. The thin blanket did not cover the entire figure, revealing her white thighs. No wonder when he was downstairs just now, the furried boy's smile was so treacherous, he didn't seem to be here at the right time. Boss, I bought shaved ice for you to eat, why don't you wait for you to finish things first? Li Xian's face was full of smiles that you understand, and he tilted his head to avoid the palm wind from his elder brother. Well, I'm here. Eat first in the next room, play slowly, don't worry. Li Xian took care of himself and walked into a room with an open door next to him. He was too lazy to care about where his boss hooked up with a little female, anyway, the other party was unlikely to become his sister-in-law. About a few minutes later, Li Kei walked in wearing a white shirt, the buttons of which were all open, revealing his strong chest muscles. He sat down on the other bed. Aren't you going to work in the afternoon? How come you are free? I just quit my job. Li Xian replied lazily while eating his own shaved ice. Oh. Li Kei looked up at his brother and didn't ask much. Brother, what's your big brother's flower name? Li Xian asked suddenly. My boss is called Scar Chiang. He has a long scar on his left eyebrow bone, which was left when he went to Tsim Sha Sui to raise the flag for the club last year. Why do you ask this? Li Kei asked curiously. My younger brother has always disliked him to join the club, and he rarely asked about this aspect of his own accord before. Li Kei's association, called He Le Tang, was originally an organization formed by a group of lower-class workers from a whole soda factory in Taquawan to resist the oppression of the factory owners. Later, it gradually evolved into a social organization. Therefore, He Le Tang also has a soda hall on the road called Calling Soda. Sham Shui Po is the old nest of Wolok Tong, but Sham Shui Po is a poor area, and there is not much oil and water. In recent years, it has begun to expand to Yao Tsim Wang, Wan Chai, Causeway Bay and other areas with developed entertainment industries, competing with other clubs for discos and bars. Sauna room and these places have the right to view the field. How about me doing business with your boss? Li Xian asked suddenly. Small guy. Li Ke looked suspicious. Although he was involved in the club, he never wanted his younger brother to take part in this business, not to mention that his younger brother had just entered the university and had a bright future. Boss, don't worry, it's a serious business, I never thought of eating the club's rice. Li Xian patted the elder brother on the shoulder and comforted, I have some ideas that I need to cooperate with your boss. What business are you doing? Li Ke's expression was still very serious, and he was still worried if he didn't ask the whole story. You've always been to the game machine room. I want to make this kind of video game machine myself, and then give it to your boss to help me sell it. Li Xian expressed his thoughts. This kind of game machine room has just been introduced to Hong Kong from Japan a few years ago, and the business is very hot. But because game consoles are too expensive, you reading www.youcanshu. The investment of Com to open a game room is not small, so Hong Kong has not yet begun to spread it out in large numbers. You can make that kind of video game console. Li Ke was a little disbelieving. I didn't make it myself either. The game consoles on the market are all imported from Japan and the United States, and the prices are too expensive. In fact, the most important thing about this type of game console is the motherboard inside. I have a way to crack it and put the games inside. The cost of copying it is much cheaper than buying a direct import machine. Li Xian explained to his eldest brother, I know that all game halls in Hong Kong have clubs watching the game behind them. So if I can directly cooperate with your big brother, the game consoles I produce will be directly handed over to your big brother, whether he invests in the game room himself, or sells it to other bosses, I can save a lot of trouble. There are several game halls in He Le Tang's venue in Sham Shui Po. Li Ke often goes there when he is free. Playing games is much more interesting than playing billiards. Those few venues are much richer than the broken video room he watched. If his brother can really make that kind of game console, it will definitely make a lot of money. Li Ke knew that his younger brother's mind was more eye-catching than his, and after listening to Li Xian's clear analysis, he had already believed a little. If you need capital to do business, where does your money come from? Here. Li Xian took out a prepared passbook from his pocket. I invented a Chinese Han card for printers when I was working in Hengtai, and a Japanese company took a fancy to me and spent a lot of money. The price was bought from me and you bought the design, and the money is all in this passbook. Li Ke took the passbook and glanced at the numbers on it. He couldn't help but be stunned. Xian Xiao, you are here. As soon as Li Xian stepped into the door of the game room, a pony sitting behind the cashier immediately got up and greeted him with a smile. Li Xian took out a pack of cigarettes from his pocket and threw one out. Is Cao Sheng not here? In Cantonese, it is customary to call Mr. Sheng for short. Cao Sheng is the owner of this video game room. His name is Cao Mingfa. When Li Xian came to this game room for the first time, he happened to encounter a fixed board of a game machine. The so-called fixed board is that the game suddenly gets stuck on a screen and will not move. It just so happened that the repairman couldn't come for a while, so Li Xian persuaded Cao Mingfa, who was present at the time, to allow him to disassemble the mainboard of the arcade machine to take a look. Li Xian used an oscilloscope found in the warehouse to check the CPU first, and it turned out that it was really a CPU problem. It only took Li Xian less than 2 minutes to find out the problem. At that time, the boss Cao Mingfa didn't quite believe it. Later, the repairman specially hired by the game room said that it took half an hour to finally determine that it was the CPU problem. So when Li Xian came to this game room for the second time, he was promoted from Xianzai to Xian Xiao. The boss specially instructed a few cashiers that he would play for free. Of course, Li Xian didn't come here specifically to play games. In 1978, Taito Limited released an arcade game called Space Invaders, which caused a huge sensation all over the world. It was also at this time that Hong Kong began to introduce such large-scale electronic game machines from Japan, and there were the first few game arcades. Space Invaders is a shooting game. Players control the plane to move left and right to fire bullets, and destroy the rows of alien monsters that move slowly downward at the top of the screen. The King of Fighters, Street Fighter, these arcade games are 1,000 miles worse. But it is such a simple game in Li Xian's opinion, but in this era it has attracted the attention of countless teenagers from all over the world. From Europe to North America to Asia, there are always a lot of people gathered at the door of the grocery department and convenience store. Compared with the American arcade market, which mainly comes from crowded places such as community convenience stores, grocery stores, gas stations, and movie theaters, Hong Kong is concentrated in specialized game halls. The main reason for this is that the price of arcade machines is too expensive. It costs $2,400 to import a Space Invaders game console from Japan's Namco Corporation, which is equivalent to more than 12,000 Hong Kong dollars. Willing to spend such a large price to import? On the contrary, a small number of bosses who have the vision and are willing to take risks bought a dozen or 20 games in one go and opened a special game room. Every day, they were full of customers and made a lot of money. Li Xian believes that with these people who take the lead in eating crabs, jealous followers will soon flood in. Hey, every time Xian Xiao comes, there is Marlboro. The cashier called A Liang, Cao Sheng came this afternoon, and he's gone. Oh, it doesn't matter if he's not here. Are there any unusable computer boards in the warehouse? Li Xian asked. Yes, 2 more were broken this week, only one was repaired by Pujuan, and the other was a problem with the computer board, and it can only be repaired after returning to the factory. Pujuan is a repairman hired by the game room, who can only repair some relatively simple wiring problems. Well, I'll go to the warehouse and have a look. Later, the strong brother from your soda shop will come to talk to me about something. When he comes, you can call me. Li Xian explained to A Liang that he made an appointment with Scar Chiang. Come here to talk about things. After Li Xian discussed with the big brother just now, Li Kai personally went to invite his big brother, and he came to the game hall first. As for why he chose such a noisy game room as the place to talk business, Li Xian also had his own considerations. He is easy to be looked down upon at a young age, so he needs to show his professional strength, dismantling a game console in front of the big boss Scar Chiang to do science popularization, which is more convincing than empty words. Which strong brother? Scar is strong. A Liang is also a member of Shuifangtang. The game hall created by Cao Ming was handed over to Hian Dang, a man named Sijose nicknamed Mad Dog, who was in charge of watching the game. One of the younger brothers. It is said that these flower names taken by Hong Kong community figures are very vulgar, such as Mad Dog, Bo Zi Li, Da Fei, Picking Feet, etc. Few of them can be appreciated by both the refined and the common. Apart from Scar Strong, have other strong brothers appeared in your Shuifangtang recently? Scar Chiang can be regarded as the most fierce and prominent eldest brother among a group of new generation characters that have emerged in Hiandang in recent years. 2 years ago, he was an ordinary 4'9" boy with only a few younger brothers. Later, when he wanted to be promoted, the club gave him a chance to express himself. At that time, the 2 nightclubs in Yau Ma Ti, which were trampled by other words, were given to him. He, but did not send him any additional staff, it was all up to him to fight. Scar Chiang took 3 or 4 of his younger brothers to chop down a bunch of rotten boys who were making trouble, and robbed the 2 nightclubs of the right to watch the venue. Li Xian's older brother, Li Kai, was one of several younger brothers who followed behind Scar Chiang. That night, Li Ke was stabbed on each of his left and right arms, and the wound on his right hand was even more visible to the bone. Needle, it takes more than half a year to recuperate. Because of this incident, Li Xian's old bean, Li Haichuan, began to strongly oppose his eldest son joining the club, and threatened to cut off the father-son relationship. Li Ke had no choice but to ask the boss to arrange a video room for him to watch the show. Although the oil and water in the video hall is far less than the richness of the nightclub, the probability that the same big trouble needs to be hacked is not high. Afterwards, He Le Tang expanded to the east of Tsim Sha Sui, and Scar Chiang took the lead to plant the flag for the club. It is said that he was born in Muay Thai and played invincible hands in Tsim Sha Sui at that time. He established a strong reputation in West Kowloon, and let He Le Tang gain a firm foothold in Tsim Sha Sui, the most concentrated feng shui gem in Hong Kong nightclubs. After that, the sitting hall of He Tang even opened the Siang Tang for him personally, and promoted him to double spend red stick. Such a ruthless and powerful person, he has a good reputation in the beginning, and he is fair and loyal, and the younger brothers are very convinced. It is precisely because of the reputation of this big guy that Li Xian dared to borrow his big brother's mouth and cooperate with him to develop game consoles. The warehouse area is not large, only 7 or 8 square meters. There are 3 game consoles in the corners of the side, and 2 of the display screens on the chassis have also been removed. Under the incandescent lamp is a large rectangular workbench, on which some switches, crank handles, resistors and other components are scattered. Next to the workbench is a game console with its lower cover removed. This is probably the same machine that Al Yang said before that he couldn't get it right. Li Xian unplugged the motherboard from the socket, and then found various instruments and began to test slowly. The biggest difference between arcade motherboards and ordinary computer motherboards is that there are neat rows of chips on it. Except for a few processor chips, which are what we call CPU, most of them are DRAM memory chips. The more refined the Yuyuganshu.com game, the more memory chips it needs. Li Xian looked at the labels of the chips. Most of these memories are Intel 6116 and 6264 chips. The storage capacity of the former is 2 KB, and the storage capacity of the latter is 8 KB. In 1979, Intel was still a semiconductor company focusing on 3 types of memory: DRAM, SRAM, and ROM. CPU was not its main business because of the small market demand. Later, with the fierce competition of Japanese semiconductor companies, the profit of memory became lower and lower, and IBM launched the PC with Intel's 8088 processor, which started the frenzy of the personal computer era. Intel then seized this gauge of an opportunity and transformed itself to focus on the CPU market after 1983, so it has a series of familiar CPUs such as 286, 386, Pentium, Celeron, and Core. After a while, Li Xian had already figured out the problem with this machine. In the neat row of 6,264 chips, 2 of them were probably burned out due to insufficient heat dissipation. These memory chips all contain game data, and if one cannot be used, it will affect the work of the entire machine. In order to prevent games from being pirated, game companies strictly control parts and components. In well-established markets like Japan and the US, these jobs are naturally handled by agents. Since arcade machines have just appeared in Hong Kong, most of them are imported directly from Japan, and maintenance needs to go to Japan, which is not only troublesome but also a waste of time. Just when Li Xian frowned slightly, the door of the small warehouse was pushed open. Li Xian turned his head and saw a very imposing man in a dark suit, with a flat head and a national face, who took the lead in walking in.